There is an idea that goes through many people's minds that social power has no steps or process that can lead a person to it. Either life blesses someone with a great social life, or they just keep waiting for their turn. Of course, this belief is false. Nothing in life exists without a path that leads to it. In this video, I will give you a superpower that will allow you to effortlessly create new relationships and make new friends everywhere you go, and continuously. I'll teach you everything related to this subject, and I'll explain how to turn strangers into acquaintances and friends, and how to become appreciated and loved by all of them. You will learn social skills that will make this mission easier for you. Before we get into the core of the topic, you need to understand the role that having acquaintances plays in a person's life. Here's a question right from the start. Is it important for a person to know many people? The answer, yes, it is very important. Acquaintances make your life easier and offer you various services, and they can even get you out of problems. It might be something very simple, like taking a girl out to a cafe where you have a great relationship with all the staff, and they give you a royal welcome in front of her. Or maybe your car breaks down somewhere, and you call someone who lives nearby, and he comes to jumpstart your car using his own. Public relations are all based on mutual benefit, and this isn't a bad thing. When I say it's based on interests, I don't mean it in a cold or selfish way. There is still affection, friendship, and jokes between you. But in the end, the game is, what can you offer me and what can I offer you? Let me give you an example. Your friend who came to jumpstart your car may have had someone else ask him for the same favor before, but he made up an excuse. Yet he helped you because you're a valuable person, and he knows he might benefit from you in something later. The more valuable a guy is, the more people race to help him. Keep this firmly in your mind and remember it for the rest of your life. Now we'll get into the core of the topic. How can you have the largest number of acquaintances and public relationships in your life? There are only two factors that determine how many acquaintances a person has. The first factor is exposure, which means exposing yourself to people, going outside your house and visiting different places. In other words, having a social life and not staying locked in your room all the time. The more places you visit, the more people you meet. This exposure creates opportunities, but up to this point, you haven't done anything yet. You might find two people who live the exact same daily routine, both going to the same places and meeting the same people. Yet at the end of the day, one of them hasn't met anyone new, while the other has made about 4 new connections. How did that happen? The reason is that the second factor differs between them. This second factor is what allows you to seize the opportunities created by exposure. The second factor is your tongue, your ability to speak. This entire video will be a comparison between two people. We'll call the first one Bob and the second one Needle. We'll set up cameras and observe them for a full day. They will go to the same places, meet the same people, and be exposed to the same opportunities. Then we'll see how different the results are based on their level of social skills. Because even if I start explaining how to speak and how to talk correctly, you'll never truly understand how to act unless I show you the life of someone who really knows how to speak and how his days go. That's why we'll observe two people and see what their days look like, so that by the end of the video, you'll have a clear vision of the reason your social life isn't going well. The day's routine that we'll be observing will consist of going to 3 places. The first place, a co-working space that they will go to separately to work on their laptops. The second place, a French cooking class. The third and final place, a local art gallery. Let's start with Bob. Bob woke up, spent a bit of time lounging at home, then took a quick shower, got dressed, and drove 20 minutes to a co-working space near the river. As he entered, he noticed a guy sitting outside sketching a human anatomy diagram. The guy was a fellow medical student, just like Bob, but Bob ignored him and walked in. He chose a desk by the window, sat down, opened his laptop, and began setting up his workspace. Then he went to the front desk and said, "Hi, can I get a medium Americano, please?" The receptionist replied, "Sure, that would be $6. He handed her $10 and added, "Oh, and could you give me a tissue to wipe the desk?" She said, "All right, then the total is $7. Bob looked at her for a second and let out a weird little laugh, and the moment ended there. He returned to his desk. 30 minutes passed, and someone came in scanning the room for a charging outlet for their computer. Bob didn't even glance at them and stayed focused. An hour later, 2 young women in their 20s sat at the next table. One of them was criticizing her friend for letting her boss walk all over her. Less than 30 minutes later, Bob had finished his work and began packing up his things. He had been drawn to one of the girls since she came in and wished he could talk to her, but didn't know how. He worried she might think he was being intrusive, so he grabbed his bag and walked out without saying a word. Bob went back home for a while, had lunch, then went out again to attend a cooking class. It was his first day there. At the entrance, the receptionist told him, "Head to kitchen number 4, your classmates are inside, and Chef Diana will be here in 10 minutes. Bob entered and found 1 guy and 4 girls already there. He said, "Hello," sat beside the guy, and started scrolling through Twitter on his phone. Chef Diana arrived shortly after, introduced herself, and got to know the students. Then she said, "Today's session will be all about teamwork. Let's choose a recipe to cook together. Any suggestions? Bob said, how about we try making a mushroom risotto? Two of the girls suggested different dishes, and in the end, Chef Diana decided on making mini quiches. They spent about an hour and a half learning, cooking, and discussing techniques and presentation tips. Bob was engaged and gave his input. For example, when his classmate Mena said baking is the hardest part of cooking because it requires so much accuracy and patience, Bob disagreed and said, I don't think that's true. Sure, baking is delicate, but I think managing multiple pans on a busy stove is more intense. Time passed and the session came to an end. Bob went downstairs and called his friend Ross to pick him up and head to the art gallery. Ross arrived and they went together. When they got there, they were struck by how sophisticated the place looked. The walls were filled with modern paintings and ambient music echoed throughout the hall. They chose a bench and sat down to look around. A few minutes later, a guide came and gave them a brief introduction before stepping away. After about 30 minutes, Bob got up to use the restroom. As he reached for the door handle, a guy next to him said, I've been waiting for the last person to come out so I could go in. Bob replied, no worries, I'll just be a minute. The guy responded, alright, I'm starting the stopwatch. When Bob came out, the guy showed him his phone and said, look, you went over by 40 seconds. Bob laughed and said, fair enough. Then he grabbed Ross and they both left the gallery. And that was the end of Bob's day. Now let's see how someone with a sharp tongue and strong social skills would act when faced with the same situations Bob went through. After Needle showered, got dressed, and parked his car, he walked into the co-working space and noticed a guy sitting outside sketching a complex diagram on his tablet. Recognizing that it was medical related and guessing he was also a student like him, Needle approached and said, that looks like brain anatomy. Are you in med school too? The guy nodded and they started chatting. A few minutes later, they were following each other on Instagram and laughing over shared struggles with clinical exams. Then Needle went inside and picked a sunny spot by the window. He walked over to the front desk and said, good morning. If you were me, would you go for something hot to stay cozy or iced to pretend it's summer again? The receptionist smiled and replied, on a day like this, hot, no question. Needle nodded dramatically. Perfect. One large iced Americano then, she laughed. Alright, that'll be $8.50. He gave her $10 and added, also, toss in a napkin. Can't let this laptop suffer from pastry crumbs again. She said, that brings it to $9.50. Needle put his hand on his chest and said, $9.50 for a napkin? Is it embroidered with my initials? She laughed again, gave him the napkin and 50 cents back and said, go sit, I'll bring the coffee myself when it's ready. He thanked her and went back to his desk. 30 minutes passed and a guy walked in scanning the walls for a power socket. Needle looked up and asked, looking for something? The guy said, yeah, I need to charge my tablet. Needle leaned in and whispered with a grin, okay, here's the plan. I'll start coughing uncontrollably and you use that moment to sneak behind the guy in the corner and claim his outlet like a ninja. The guy burst out laughing and said, bro, you're wild, before walking off. Needle smiled, popped his headphones back in and returned to work. An hour later, the same two girls from earlier walked in and sat at the next table. One was upset with her friend for being too forgiving with her boss. Needle glanced over casually. When he finished his work and packed his things, he stood up, approached their table politely and said, sorry to interrupt. I know I wasn't supposed to hear your conversation, but I did. Blame the acoustics in this place. I just wanted to say one thing and I promise I'll be out of your hair. May I? The girl nodded, a little surprised. Needle looked at the friend and said, I don't know the full story, but from what I heard, she's not criticizing you. She's protecting you. The fact that she's this worked up means she genuinely cares. Then he nodded respectfully, looked at the friend again and said, people like her are rare. Value her. Then he smiled and left the co-working space. Back home, Needle had lunch and headed to the cooking class. At the entrance, the girl at the desk smiled and said, head to kitchen number 4. Chef Diana will be here in 10 minutes. Needle stepped in, saw one guy and 4 girls chatting, and without hesitation walked up and said, hi folks, I'm Needle. I figured I'd rather get awkward introductions out of the way before we're all elbow deep in cheese and eggs. Everyone laughed and introduced themselves. They chatted until Chef Diana arrived. She greeted them and said, today we're doing a group session. Let's vote on what dish to make. Any suggestions? Needle said, how about something French? Maybe we bond over burnt soufflés and life regrets. A girl named Emma suggested mini quiches instead. They did a quick random draw. Emma's idea won. Quiches it was. As the class went on, they discussed plating, timing, and creativity. At one point, Charlotte said, honestly, I think baking is the hardest job. Needle leaned on the counter and said with mock seriousness, I fully agree. I mean, what's tougher? A firefighter rescuing people from a burning building or a man baking croissants and hoping they don't come out looking like soggy slippers? Everyone cracked up. Charlotte laughed and tried to defend herself. The rest of the session was filled with jokes and light debate. Eventually, time was up and the class ended. Needle went downstairs and called his friend Ross to pick him up so they could head to the art gallery. Ross arrived and they went together. They entered the space space which looked like a dimly lit museum filled with surreal artwork. After choosing a bench to sit on, they began quietly admiring the pieces. After 30 minutes, Needle got up to use the restroom. Just as he was about to enter, a guy beside him said, "I've been waiting for the person before you to come out." Needle said, "No worries, I'll only be a minute." The guy replied, "Alright, I'm starting a timer." Needle smirked, "Give me 60 seconds, and if I fail, you can name your price." When Needle came out, the guy showed him his phone. 2 minutes had passed. "You went over," he said. Needle gasped in mock horror. "That can't be. Your phone must be set to dog years." The guy laughed. "No, it's accurate. Should I call the gallery staff and report a bathroom hijacking?" Needle held up his hands. "Peace, brother. Let me pay the bathroom tax," and faked pulling out his wallet. They both laughed. The guy patted him on the back and went in. Needle returned to his friend. And that was the end of Needle's day. Let's take a look at what Needle gained by the end of his day. At the co-working space, he turned a casual moment into a new connection with the student sketching outside, and he created a playful, relaxed energy with the front desk, which means next time he visits, chatting with her about more personal things will feel completely natural, if he chooses to. If not, he's still got a familiar face and a bit of chemistry at a place he visits often. As for the guy looking for a charger, nothing came of it directly, but now that they've shared a funny moment, saying hello or even sharing a table in the future would be easy. Same with the girl who was upset with her friend. If he sees her again, there's no social wall between them anymore. At the cooking class, he became the kind of person everyone wants around. His presence made the session fun and dynamic, and without him, it would have likely just been another boring recipe lesson. Did you see the difference? Both Needle and Bob had a very high level of exposure on that day. Going to 3 places in one day is truly a great thing, but even if you go to 10 places instead of 3, if you don't take the initiative to speak to people with a smart tongue, you will gain nothing. These were Needle's results from just one day. So now calculate how many new people will enter his life by the end of the month and what impact that will have on his social power. And I know this video didn't contain a lot of details, but it was necessary to include it in the social skills series. If you don't understand the theory first, then no matter how much I talk to you or give you techniques, they won't help you at all. That's why in this video, I wanted to give you a general idea so I can go deeper in the upcoming ones. Get ready, our journey has just begun. And if you're still watching up to this moment in the video, I love you. And that was the Dark Needle, and I'll see you in the next video.